Welcome to another episode of the Advice First podcast. Robert Clark here, your host. And today I have a well-suited man sitting across from me and a person that I look up to on the daily for many reasons that you're about to learn and hear about yourself. And this man goes by the name of Ryan James Miller. Welcome to the Advice First podcast. Ryan, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, buddy. I'm glad I go by that name.
I mean, for Strong. Everything. It's the name. It's your name. It's the name of your business. Like we just talked about off air. It's the name of your vlog.
It's accidental.
Is it?
Yeah, it's kind of accidental. See, when I started my business back in 2011, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't really have any guidance. And so I had to go file for a business license in the city of Yorba Linda where I started my business. Wow. And so they said, "Oh, what's your business name?" I was like, "Oh, crap." So it's like, what sounds really important? Oh, my initials, Professional. So RJM Professional is where it started. Wow. And so that's what it was. Actually, that's still my LLC. I do operate a consulting agency under that business name. And then as time went on, it just got really hard, like RJM Professional. It just like tongue ties and people couldn't spell it.
Right.
So then just my name kind of came to be.
Then the name.
Yeah.
And that really, what we'll get into, but that really speaks to the broader message at hand here of it's all about authenticity and what you like. And so maybe RJM Professional wasn't, you created that to sound credible or legitimate. And I think the life you lead today is, dude, I'm Ryan Miller.
Yeah. And I don't think I've ever said this at least in any documented place, but for the longest time, I didn't speak to my real dad. You know that, you know some of that story, like that part of it. But so part of then not speaking to my dad, my biological father, was I didn't want to associate with his name. And my middle name is his first name, James. And when I was growing up, when my parents got divorced, my dad got remarried. I had an older stepbrother named Brian. And so Brian and Ryan was too hard. And so they always called me RJ. So I just wanted to disassociate myself from as much of that as possible. And this kind of like interesting moment of redemption after I reconnected with my dad was I'm proud to use that name again. And so a big part of me using my full name, other than it just sounding like a selfish narcissist, was kind of this bold statement that I love who I've been called.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm back.
Yeah.
It's Ryan James Miller.
Yeah.
Bam. Let's see. So let me intro this by just clarifying for all of our listeners. Ryan James Miller is a coach, business coach, sales coach, branding coach. Basically, I mean, for me, he's been any coach that I need him to be, or psychologist or therapist. But a man that wears many hats, and as a client of Ryan's for the last at least a year, maybe 2 years,
year and a half. Yeah.
Year and a half.
Yep.
I've experienced, just phenomenal breakthroughs in my business and my personal life. And so that's why I was really excited to have Ryan on our podcast today to share a lot of what he knows and does so well for a lot of those clients. But coaching isn't all you do. And so when I think of, tell people what Ryan does, I'm like, well, get out the list, right? How do you explain that? Because there's a number of channels that you perform very similar work, but I think you just work with a variety of individuals.
Yeah, I mean, years ago, I remember working with a sales trainer when I was a salesperson. and he was helping us to hone our elevator pitch to the audience that we were in front of, right? And so much so that like if you get in an elevator with somebody and they ask you what you do, before you answer them, you turn it back on them and find out what they do, so you could kind of hone it to them. So I think that's some of it is, knowing my audience, because I have two different consulting practices. So my primary one in the consulting world is helping organizations create and execute on business development, sales strategy, marketing strategy. So that's everything from identifying the client all the way through to prospecting, conversion, and on to execution. Most companies actually don't have that documented and well thought out. So I do that. I have another consulting business that is in a totally different world we won't talk about today. And then I operate a business in the healthcare world. I work with a medical cost sharing company that delivers a non-insurance solution to small businesses, individuals. My family and I have been members for 5 years. I'm only in that business because I'm really passionate about what they're doing as an organization. And anybody that listens knows that our healthcare system is an absolute disaster, and health insurance is as well. So I feel like this is a good alternative for a lot of people. I speak, but that's typically just the result of consulting and or coaching. So invited into that world, and then coaching. And that is my love. That is where, if I could choose to spend all of my professional time in one place, it would be there by far.
On the coaching end?
Yeah, absolutely.
Really? Why is that?
Because I think at the end of the day, knowing that I'm helping people to sometimes for the first time in their life see who they truly are, and then helping them to apply that to the things that they dream about, right? To the things that they strive for. And there's a lot of different ways that comes into play, because sometimes I'm approached by an organization that wants me to coach a new manager on leadership development and skill and communication. Other times it's a salesperson that needs help with sales process and execution. Somebody like yourself, right? That's an entrepreneur, and you have your hand in a few different professional endeavors. And so you're trying to make sure that all of those things you're performing at a high level. So there's a lot of different ways in which people approach me, but no matter what, because I feel like it's where I'm good at, is helping to extract those things, the best out of those people, and then helping them to see that. Because when those lights come on, and when people succeed, and even beyond success, when people finally feel like they get it, if I've been like 1% of the reason why that's happened, on the professional side of my life has been made.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. It has to be fulfilling. Having gone through that process, talk a little bit about, and maybe I'm impartial to this, it was one of my favorite breakthroughs working with you was the importance of really laying that foundation. So kind of digging deeper than the top level stuff of, here's your messaging, here's, your audience and this and that, but really digging deep into the individual.
Yeah.
I know you go a lot into roles. You have a program called Foundations. What took you to going to that level and ultimately helped you realize that was the fundamental piece to changing performance?
So I think a lot has gone into that, trying to summarize it the best way I can today, like, through all of my own seasons of ups and downs and kind of figuring that out for myself, was recognizing that we have down fairly well how to shape habit and discipline. We have down reasonably well how to set goals. But what I realized for so many people that perform at a decently high level is something is still not like filling them up. It's not like making them feel full. And so people are quick to say, well, that's because they're doing the wrong things. I don't actually believe that's the case. I believe that it's because at the root of who they are, they haven't recognized what is bringing them to that end goal. So if I don't if I'm not clear on my purpose, if I'm not clear on the passions for what gets me out of bed every single day, what I fight for, what I'm willing to dive for, if I'm not clear there, then I'm just going to be a really good, structured high performer, which isn't a bad thing, but it's just missing that end game. Because how many people do you know that make a 6-7 figure salary, that have a great marriage, that have a nice home, that drive nice cars? Like, all those are good things, but they will all still typically say, what's next? Mm-hmm. What's next? And it's not, we again go to the negative of like, well, it's because they're greedy. I'm like, no, they're not. Right. For most people, that's how they're finding fulfillment. Yep. And so it's like, let's just take a huge step back. We may not have to blow up any of that stuff. Yeah. Let's just figure out where you're rooted in or what you're rooted in and see if we can use those things to influence more of what you're doing on the day-to-day.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's funny that you say that, because that was one of my personal experiences to that end and I remember telling you this, but I was just like, I'm content. Like, I love everything going on in my life on the professional side and personal. And like, I'm not searching or yearning for that next golden opportunity or anything like that. And so I'm a believer. And I think there's a lot of truth in what you said.
Well, and that's been a really big challenge, actually. So you talk about foundations, and that's gone through some iterations. So I'm in the process of working with this team of people to create this academy called the Foundations to Freedom. At least that's what I think it's going to be called right now. And one of the challenges that we're having is, when you deliver a solution to the marketplace, you figure out what the pain is, mm-hmm. and then you address that pain with a solution. Most of the people that I am best suited to work with, that find the best opportunity in working with me, aren't in pain per se. Mm-hmm. There may be some anxiety, there may be some frustration, but the world is not falling apart, right? And so we're really struggling to articulate well the state of being that person is in when I'm like, hey, I've got something for you. Yeah. So it really is hard, because the world's not falling apart for most people at that point.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Why do you think using a coach is so rare?
I think that because, a couple of reasons. First of all, is it's expensive. In almost any stretch of the imagination, whether you are engaged with a coach that you're paying a couple $100 a month for or a couple $1,000 a month for, mm-hmm. That's a lot of money when you really think about, what people are earning, what people are spending their time or their money in for other things. There's just not a lot of room in the budget for that for most people. So I think that's a big reason. And people try and sell through that idea, but I think that's a really real challenge. Yep. The second reason is because I think there's a lot of shitty coaches out there that have created this narrative that if you just do as I do, you will become like I am. Mm-hmm. And I believe that has wrecked far more people than it has helped in this world. Mm. And then the last one is I really do believe it's scary to admit that I don't have it all together mm-hmm. when I have it all together. Mm-hmm. When I think about when I'm at my best, and have been for 20, 30 years, whatever, 20 years professionally, I would have never thought to ask for help during those times. Right. Because in some sense, that's an admission of weakness. Mm-hmm. And so I think those are some of the big reasons, at least at the beginning, as to why people struggle.
Yeah, absolutely. Gosh. So you actually made it to one of the first questions that I wrote down or topics to go over with you, because we haven't discussed, you put a lot of branding effort behind the phrase "be authentic," and you truly live that. That's one of the reasons that I'm drawn to continually working with you as someone who lives what they say. But sometimes, living authentically means that we are going to post raw and vulnerable things, or share raw and vulnerable messages, just like you said, with those around us. And in today's world, many of those messages find themselves on social media.
Yep.
This is a multi-tiered question here, so be ready.
I'm tracking.
Okay. But then you have a lot of people tying their self-worth to the engagement of those messages on their social media accounts. And I have, I've probably even posted, certain things that gets, 9 likes instead of 40, or, 19 instead of 120. And it affects people's judgment of their own self-worth.
Yeah.
When you experience something like that, when you share something vulnerable and no one, you don't get the overwhelmingly positive response, how do you respond to
that? It hurts, right? There's no way. I don't feel like there's a person out there that could truthfully say that a lack of response feels good. Right. And again, right, there's all this nuance of, the number of people that follow you versus the number of people that follow me is different. Or you say that because, you get 1,000 likes and I only get 10. So I understand there's nuance in that, but I think that we need to address the fact, at least up front, that it doesn't feel good to not be heard. And actually, I think that for most people that are out to really share their story honestly, because there's a lot of people that do it for sales opportunity, right? Let me keep creating content that's gut wrenching and provocative to get people to follow me. Yeah. And I hope no one ever follows you like that. Yeah. That's sad to say, but I do. For people that are truly intending to get their story across, I think that they already have struggled with this want to be heard and aren't being heard. And because they see a platform like a LinkedIn or Instagram or whatever, where people are being heard and are being quote unquote engaged with, it's really a hard thing to deal with. So I definitely deal with it. I'm actually in one of those pits right now of engagement on LinkedIn. I mean, I went from getting 5,000 plus views on posts to now I'm getting 500. Right. And there are big changes that platforms like that have been making. So that's there. But what I'm trying to stand in then is two things. Number one, I just need to be consistent because that's just who I am. But secondly, and more importantly, is only one person really needs to hear you share your story. Because I had a post a week and a half ago or 2 weeks ago or something like that that was very vulnerable. Few people even saw, at least from what I saw. And yet had a woman reach out to me that was so broken over what I'd shared and opened up and cried to me. And I'd never talked to her on the phone. We were on video and she was crying to me and she was apologizing. And I'm like, look, this is what this is for, right? And so you could be affecting that one person that you really need to affect. And so for that alone, fight through that struggle and be willing to just continue to share because somebody else is going to resonate with everything. That's why the personal stuff typically gets a lot more engagement than the professional stuff does anyway, because people resonate with the personal highs and lows of life.
Yep. Absolutely. And yeah, 1,000%. And I think your response to that is spot on. Because, you are very active on social media channels, whether it's Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, even YouTube, I would throw in there. And I think for especially a lot of the businesses that you're consulting who are trying to venture into this world, right? It's here to stay. How do we take our message there? They're going to start with getting, 10 views and 20 views and 6 months of that. And someone's going to say, we got to pull this. It's not going anywhere. And so you are the perfect person to sit beside them and say, listen, that is not what's important here. This is the most important piece. And I love that.
And you know, I want to make sure that, again, first of all, I'm nobody in the world of so many people out there that are garnering so much attention online. But what I will say is why I believe I'm the right person for the people that are willing to do the right thing is because I'm still experiencing the highs and lows. Again, like, it's so easy to teach people what to do when we've arrived. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, pat you on the head. Don't worry, you'll get there, right? It's like It's like for somebody like yourself. Yep. You're 31, right? 31. And so for the 50-year-old to look at you and be like, you got time. Come on, just be patient. It's like, screw you. Don't, you know, you're there. You're not talking from in the trenches experience. You're talking from, you know, looking back at it. So that's why I feel like for the people that really want to do it the right way, I can be a valuable asset because I'm still stepping through it. Mm-hmm. And I'm still testing. I'm still figuring things out within myself and then within the platforms that we're all engaging in.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, going back to one of your original answers of what do you do, Mr. Ryan James Miller, and you listed, you know, 4, 5, or 6 endeavors, but then here you are, you know, being readily active on social channels, posting not just once a day, but multiple times a day, even on a couple specific. How the heck do you manage all of those projects within, you know, and those social media posts are only for, I guess, one, or it might span across 1 or 2 of your primary focuses, but then to have the other things, I know that's something that businesses are struggling with right now. It's just, there's a lot we want to do. How do we manage all of it?
Yeah. So a couple of things. First of all, I do feel like I just try to keep it simple. So, I mean, you know, we talk about this quite a bit where I have a note app on my phone, and every time I think about something, just a random thought or an experience with my kid or whatever, I just take a note about what I would talk about because then that's my idea. Or sometimes I'll type out the whole post and just save it for another day. Yep. So in the moment, just kind of like creating content, I think, is really helpful. I mean, if you think about our lives, everything is content worthy. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, if we're trying to tell the story about who we are to the people that we want to engage with, everything can be told, right? Something's more appropriate than others for certain times. So that's one big thing that I do is I'm just always thinking about like what to just saying whatever I feel. Mm-hmm. And I used to create content like on the fly, like literally say it, post it, and share it right there. That just got a little bit overwhelming because there's more that goes into finishing it off. Right. So that's one. Number 2 is I still struggle. I want to insert that in. Like I've gone I've skipped weeks of podcasts at a time, even though I've got them all queued up because they didn't get pushed out to the person to edit or, you know, whatever. Right. 3, and this one has been the biggest blessing for me this year specifically, is I've always believed in like outsourcing things that you don't like or are not good at or don't have the time for. And so this year I went a step further into that, especially as it related to content. And I was able to find what started off as just a guy that was going to cut up video, right, and edit. And Ian's in the room today, like videoing as we're doing this, and this content will be shared later on. Where is he? And that was originally because I was recording 1-hour just video sessions, educational kind of sessions, and then I needed someone to just edit them and make some clips out of them. And he started doing that and did a wonderful job. And by the way, this is at like early on in the pandemic when my business got smashed and like I didn't really want to spend money. But I found somebody that was like-minded in the sense of desiring to put a great product out there, very creative. And so we've continued to step farther into that, where now he's recording hours of video with me that he edits. He's creating social clips out of that. And we're getting ready to take a step farther than that, which is he's actually going to be taking over all creative. So and the caveat is I'm very protective of my voice.
Right.
So I still want to write my posts. I still want to be the one with like, this is what I'm going to say. But I want him to like, we've been working together long enough. He knows the types of things I can talk about. He knows the audiences. He's really great with, hey, let's turn this into this, or let's do this way instead. So hopefully he's going to be taking over a lot more even of the podcast side of things and everything.
Wow.
So it's a significant investment. And it's scary, right? Especially when it's just me out there generating revenue, at least right now. But content is everything. Like that's the only way we can engage with people to get people to know us, like us, trust us, and want to work with us.
Who do you consider a mentor to yourself? Like, yeah,
that's a great question. So I've always struggled with that. Always struggled with that in my life. Right now, I have a couple of really close friends that speak into different areas of my life. So like John, who you know well, Welch's, he is just one of the most wonderful, I don't even want to call him a sounding board. He's definitely there to like listen, but he's the first one to say like, that's not you. Or don't be like that. Or
he said that in your last vlog episode. Actually, I caught it. It was at the very end.
Okay.
Did you? No. And one of the things that he said as you were trying to like get him to talk, and he was closing the door on you, he's like, "I don't like you right now. You're acting."
Oh,
I was like, that is so good. Shout out to John Welch's Red Mallard. Red Mallard is a marketing firm. They do a lot of. They built my website, and I'm sure they've done stuff for you as well. But yeah, shout out to John.
Yeah. And what's so cool about that is like I started out coaching John back in 2013 in his business. That developed into a friendship. Now our family spends some time together. And so he's great like that. And he's a wonderful spiritual advisor too, because he's the first guy when like the other day I was really anxious and he comes into my office and he's like, let's just pray about it. And so that's been really big for me, is to have those moments of settle. He's really good at that because I'm not.
Right.
So that's somebody. Outside of that, there's actually another guy that I've leaned on for years and years as it relates to a lot of just my own personal struggles, even like challenges in ministry when I was in pastoral ministry, and just marriage questions. When my coworker committed suicide back in 2016, he was the first phone call I made. So just having people like that have been really helpful for me, because while I want and I desire for a small group of high-performing business people that can help push my business forward, I feel it's far more important for me to have my life together, because that will produce great business.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of that. It's interesting that, you don't mention the Gary V's or the Zig Ziglars, the most common ones. I love that it's all people that you're closely tied to.
I mean, and there's definitely like outside influence from thought leaders of the day. So when I think about all of the fundamental skills of sales that I have gained over the years, it's come by way of two people. One, everybody will know. The other one, nobody will know. So the first one is Zig Ziglar. Definitely like that. When I started selling in the late 90s, that was like the heyday of Ziglar. I'll never forget going to an offsite training there and watching the trainer at the time do the sell the shoe trick and that whole thing. So that was a big influence. The other one, though, from a sales perspective, is a guy by the name of Stan Jernigan. He was the corporate sales trainer I talked about earlier. So he was the one that actually really inspired me to go out and coach and train on my own. Wow. So those two guys, definitely from just like a conversationalist perspective, Joe Rogan has had a huge influence on how I treat people. And that sounds really interesting for a lot of people to hear that, because he can be pretty, I don't want to say aggressive is not the right word, but he's pretty outspoken, right? Yeah. He's got his opinions, but I admire the way he handles people of differing opinions and the way he's so accepting. I mean, he'll call out crazy when there's crazy, but he does such a good job of just bringing people together of so many different backgrounds. And so that influences the way that I communicate with people that think differently than I do.
Love that.
And then, I mean, you know, for me personally, and again, this is a very, very deeply personal one, but like God for me is the center of all things. And that wasn't always the case in my life until just about 14 years ago. And so I truly believe, like there's a quote from C.S. Lewis, it's on my email signature, that says, it's not your business to succeed, but to do what is right. When you have done so, the rest lies with God. And so I really believe that it is God that has saved my life. It's him that has equipped me with the things that he does. It's him that protects me. It is him that drives me to be the best that I can. And so, you know, that influence and continuing to allow that to feed in my life is huge.
I mean, that's a whole nother aspect. And I don't know if that's, you know, one of the businesses that you mentioned in the beginning here, but to think about all of the stuff that I know you're involved in, and for the longest time, I don't think you are currently, but for the longest time, you were pastoring every Sunday.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
I don't get it. Like, do you also only have 24 hours in a day?
Well, like, let's, you know, be realistic in a couple of ways. First of all, I haven't always handled my time well. And so there was times when I would say that I was, from a time perspective, abusing my family, right? So not spending enough time with them. There was a time when I was letting certain business things go because, you know, I had interests in other areas. I wasn't always the greatest pastor to people in the church because I didn't have time, right, to be able to do all the things that were needed. For me, at the end of the day, more important than anything, and this goes back to kind of just that mantra, be authentic, but it's like, I just want to be me. And so part of that means that I trust, and again, this sounds very over spiritualized for a lot of people, so I apologize, but I just trust that God puts before me the things that I am to do, right? So a new client, or a relationship with somebody, or a conversation with somebody at Starbucks, or a fun project to do on the side. So I just really trust that. And then I listen to my wife a lot too, because she's the first one to tell me, like, yo, if you don't knock this off, you're dead, right?
You're a smart married man.
Yeah. But I wasn't always that way either, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Yeah. I feel like this podcast is either about to go 33 minutes or 64 minutes. So,
save people.
We'll venture somewhere in between. But there is a piece that you mentioned, and I think it's very important, extremely relevant. When COVID-19 found its way to the United States, and especially here in California, like things
like back in October. No, just kidding.
Yeah. And things were severely shut down here. What did happen with your business, and how have you walked away from that?
Yeah, boy. So rewinding back to about October or November of 2019, I took a significant risk, but also leaned into a really wonderful opportunity to start up a outsourced consulting firm for a friend's company. And the risk was huge, but it was a lot of capital outlay. Well, what I was banking on was my consulting practice on the sales and business development side was so steady and so lucrative at the time that would basically float all that outlay for probably 6 to 9 months. So I figured by June or July of 2020, I was going to be at even, and then everything was just upside from there. So then obviously, you know, the pandemic hit, and within 2 days of the shutdown in California, so mid-March, everybody remembers that week specifically, 2 clients had to shut their doors.
Wow.
And
business clients?
Yeah. So those were both companies that I was actually doing in-person consulting for.
Yeah.
A couple hours a week in one, actually a couple days a week at that point in the other. And so they shut their doors. And so that, and I only say this because people can just understand the weight of what this was. So that cost me about $18,000 a month.
Wow.
Right. When they shut their doors.
Oh my God.
So that was temporary, right? That was going to be temporary. The problem was the second of the two did not reopen their doors until like a month ago. And from what I understand, they've shut them back again.
Wow.
So that was gone, right? That was lost.
And so that would be November for those listening to this.
Yeah, crazy,
afterwards.
right? The primary one, which was a little bit, I was more invested into, I was making a little bit more money in, the way they shut their business down and who they protected financially, I didn't agree with. We had a record 2019. And I say we because I was just as much of a part of helping them drive that revenue. I mean, like it was ridiculous the amount of money they were making in the operation and the profitability. So they protected the ownership.
Wow.
And their opinion was basically that all of their just hourly employees could just go get unemployment because that's what was being preached at the state level at that point. Yeah. And we all knew that wasn't going to last. And by the way, people that are struggling paycheck to paycheck can't afford to wait 6 weeks for unemployment to kick in. Mm-hmm. So I actually pushed back along with one of the other executive leaders in the company, and they didn't want to hear it. And so I ended up sending an email probably a week later to the owners, letting them know that I really appreciated the last year and a half of working together. But because of the way they handled that, when the time comes for me to come back, because they had said, that was going to happen, I said I was going to have to decline because I just didn't agree. And I wanted to be clear. I said, I don't think you've done anything unethical. I said, I don't think you've done anything illegal. Please don't hear me accuse you of anything like that. I said, this is just something that I personally disagree with, and I cannot continue to contribute to the financial well-being of a company that doesn't align with what I believe is right. I mean, that's why I stopped working for corporations in the first place. Yep. And so I just couldn't go back and contribute like that.
What a hard email to send.
It was brutal.
And considering that you had just lost an additional gig, and here, we're going into the unknown of state of lockdown, and you have a family. Yeah.
And I never got a response from them.
Wow. Not
a thank you for the millions of dollars that you helped contribute to us earning. Not a thank you for your email, not an FU, nothing, zero, nothing. I mean, I was like, that was almost affirmation that I did the right thing.
I mean, FU might have been even better than no response.
It would have. Yeah. It actually absolutely would have, because at least you acknowledge the fact that I said what I said. Yeah. And not for me, but for all those people that worked for you.
Yeah. And so a very rough start through COVID.
Yeah.
But I know about, I know the year that you've had, or how you talk about it. So tell me how those next 6 months went.
I had to get my ass in gear, right? I mean, this wasn't the first time this has happened. And so I had to figure out how I was going to make up for what I had lost, because I have a family to support. And if you think that sounds like a lot of money that I lost, like that was a good majority of all of the money we were making. And in Southern California, that's not a lot of money. And so I had to figure out what I was going to do in the meantime. And I had just this amazing epiphany, probably early April, where I realized again that I wasn't completely doing what I loved doing. Like, I love consulting. I love helping businesses. It's lucrative for them and for me. I'm good at it. But again, we started off this conversation with me saying that, like, me affecting individual people is far more valuable to me as a person, far more gratifying. So I just went all in, on that. And so thankfully, through the prodding of a few people, I was able to create a couple of coaching programs for some specific communities, one in the insurance industry that we're now getting ready to launch the third group of, which I'm super pumped on. Maybe
Plug
actually 3 and 4.
Plug it.
Yeah. Broker Excellence.
Broker Excellence.
Yeah. So it's been really cool because that community, I have influence in the employee benefits space from working there and just spending time there, and very, very amazing group of people that have supported me. And so a lot of people were saying, we need help with sales. We need help with developing our own businesses. But there was this disunity in that industry where everybody was in this kind of like silo, even people that worked in the same company. So I capped it at 9 both times, to bring 9 people together that some are insurance brokers, like salespeople, others are agency owners, others are vendor partners. So in the DI world, in PBM, so pharmacy benefits space, a couple of insurance carriers, but smaller carriers, coming together and brainstorming together how they're going to grow their businesses, and then building relationships. And then I found out recently that one of my groups is setting up calls and meetings with just them outside of me, continuing to build on that. And they're working on projects together, and they're across the country.
Yeah.
So that's been sick for me. Like
that's awesome.
And they're happy about it.
Sick in a good way.
Yeah, sick in a good way.
Yeah,
for all of you that look at that. So we'll launch group 3 and maybe group 4 right after the first of the year, which I'm really excited about.
Yeah.
And so that's gone well. What started off with the Foundations program, which was originally going to be 90 days, and then we pushed it a little bit longer than that with a small group of people, has birthed what is going to become that Foundations to Freedom Academy. That will be a 12-week intensive group coaching program that I will facilitate live, virtually live probably for the most part. That will be limited to 20 people at a time. And that is going to be taking all 9 pillars of this idea of identifying my foundations and ultimately achieving freedom. That's going to be walking people through that whole process. So that's coming pretty soon. I would have done none of that, had it not been for COVID, because I would have been earning good money, picking up a one-on-one coaching client every now and again. It wasn't that I was complacent. It was just that I was doing good and doing good stuff. Already in October, end of October, I surpassed my 2019 revenue.
Wow.
And my 2019 revenue was the best year I'd ever had in business in the 8 years to that date I had been in business.
Wow.
So 9 years in, this will be the best year I've had, thank God, financially, though it's been significantly challenging. And I'm unsure of what 2021 looks like. I just know that if I just continue to do the things that I think are right for me, that I can equip other people to go do the same for them, and that will pay itself in spades.
I love that.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen to you, it happens for you.
Yeah.
Well, I'm definitely, from there, we need to make sure our listeners know how to find you. So I don't know what your preferred method of building that know, like, and trust, but shout out to whatever channel you want people to find you on. So
the 3 places, I guess, that I spend the most time. Number 1 is LinkedIn, definitely. Through LinkedIn's web address /RJM Sales Pro, or it's Ryan James Miller. On Instagram, it's at Ryan James Miller, it's at RJM Sales Pro. I almost screwed up my own there. And then YouTube is /Ryan James Miller.
Yep.
So I'm putting out content on a daily, sometimes twice daily basis on LinkedIn and Instagram, at least once, twice a week on YouTube. And then I got a fun text community going right now. That's been a great way to engage with people. If you want to sign up for that, that's 714-202-9402. And if you text RJM to that, you'll get opted in. I don't spam there, but I've been doing a lot of giveaways for Christmas. So sending out like hats and shirts and books that I've liked from the year, tons of cool stuff. So people can get engaged.
One more time on the text number.
Yeah, 714-202-9402.
There we go.
So you get signed up. You'll have to accept that you're in. And then everything from that point forward, I'm texting. It's not automated. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
I have yet to get into that, actually.
I know. Because I feel like we just text all the time.
That's true.
But you can get in.
I know. There's other insights there to be had. Highly recommend finding Ryan James Miller on whichever channel you prefer, Mr. or Mrs. Listener. very thought-provocative content. Like I said, this man lives what he says, and that's one reason that I love him and continue to work with him. So thank you so much for sharing your insights today, Ryan.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate being on and being a part of your life and just watching all the amazing things that you've done. So this is just another one of them.
Likewise. Be authentic. Securities and investment advisory services offered through Next Financial Group, Inc., member FINRA SIPC. Prosperitas Financial is not an affiliate of Next Financial Group, Inc. This material is not intended as an offer or solicitation for the purchase of sale of any security or other financial instrument. Past performance does not guarantee future performance. All the views expressed are those of Robert Clark and Prosperitas Financial and not of those of Next Financial Group, Inc. Next does not offer tax or legal advice. The S&P 500 is a market cap weighted index composed of common stocks of 500 leading companies in the leading industries of the U.S. economy. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is a price weighted index of 30 actively traded blue chip stocks.